What's for dinner tonight? As something approached me, saying that. I, who no longer even considered it human, didn't respond. I quickly washed the dishes and headed to the bedroom, intending to go to bed. Hey, Emily, what's wrong? That annoying something followed me, nagging as I went. Annoyed, I ignored it and went into the bedroom, closing the door behind me. I have my part-time work tomorrow and need to get to bed early. I have no time to deal with that nuisance. Emily, I don't know what you're mad about, but don't ignore me. Something was pestering me with a somewhat frantic voice. As usual, it was so annoying, but I was living my life as normal. I don't know what you did, but it's probably your fault, right? Kevin was talking to that nuisance, but I didn't care. At most, I marvel at how he even bothers to talk. That's the extent of my feelings. To me, it's just a nuisance. I said with a smile. I'm Emily, a 36-year-old housewife working part-time. I have a husband named John and a son named Kevin. I met him when I was in college. As I started college, I moved to New York and lived alone. Please. We really need one more person. Okay, I get it. But I might not talk much, you know? He was at the mixer. I was dragged to by a college friend to make up numbers. Emily, you okay? Tired? Being from a small town, I barely spoke, not wanting to embarrass myself. He kindly spoke to me, making me laugh with his interesting stories. Because of that, I relaxed and started to feel attracted to him. Hey, Emily. Would you mind exchanging contacts? I'd love to talk to you more. So, when he asked me at the end of the mixer, I was thrilled. And I immediately told my best friend, Lisa, about it. That's great, I want a boyfriend too. He's not my boyfriend yet. Lisa has been my best friend since kindergarten, and we share everything. She has a delicate and cute appearance, always being called cute by those around her. With your looks, Lisa, you'll find a boyfriend in no time, right? I'm tired of being called cute. I'm not interested in anyone who can't see beyond that. Despite her demure appearance, she always spoke her mind quite straightforwardly. Because of this trait, she sometimes found herself isolated from others. But I've always liked her for that. Anyway, congratulations. Let me meet him when I go to New York. Of course. She didn't pursue further education, opting instead to work in her hometown to follow her dreams. Because of that, meeting up wasn't so straightforward. Still, just talking every day was enough for me. John and I started dating after several dates and his confession. Everything went smoothly, and we got married right after I graduated. John, I think I'm pregnant. Really? Well done, Emily. I was working as an office assistant, but then I got pregnant with Kevin. After being asked by John to become a full-time housewife, I quit my job. A few years later, when Kevin started elementary school and became less dependent, I'm thinking of starting a part-time job. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It must be boring to be at home alone while Kevin is at school. After discussing it with John, I began working part-time. Although I struggled with returning to work after such a long break, I now enjoy it. It was during such ordinary and peaceful days that. Hey, Emily, don't monopolize the boys too much. I received a somewhat angry message from my mother-in-law one day. To summarize, she complained about not having seen John and Kevin recently. She didn't want to see me, so she demanded that only the two of them visit her. I see. I'll pass the message on to John then. My mother-in-law, Kate, adores her only son, John, and her grandson, Kevin, to the point of spoiling them. On the other hand, she seems to see me as the villain who stole her precious son. After you gave birth to the heir, you became useless to me. She even boldly said such a thing to me. My father-in-law, on the other hand, has always maintained a stance of indifference. Whether I'm being scolded by her or chased out of their house, he wouldn't even glance my way. Kevin, you are so smart. Truly worthy of being the heir. However, he seems to be interested only in Kevin. He dotes on him along with her. I'm the only one not accepted in that house. If that's the case, I should be the one to endure it. I'm home. How are your day? Hey, do you have any plans with your friends this weekend? Not really. I'd rather hang out with Dad if anything. Kevin responded while washing his hands. When I mentioned to him, Grandma wants you to come over and visit, his expression instantly turned awkward. I decided to ask him more about it. It's just, those two, they treat me like a baby. According to him, they think as long as they give him snacks and toys, they can do whatever they want with him. They don't let him be free, just wanting to dote on him. I was surprised by how calmly he, still a child, expressed this. If I have to go, I'd rather visit Grandma on your side. I couldn't help but smile wryly at his words. My parents live in a distant countryside, so we can't visit them often. It's a once a year, if even, occurrence. I'll talk to Dad when he gets back. He nodded in understanding and returned to his room to do his homework. As I watched him go, I pondered how to discuss this with John. John, a manager at a large corporation, often comes home late due to his busy schedule. Even today, he came back after Kevin had gone to bed. Your mother said to bring Kevin over next time, without me, of course. He looked displeased as I brought this up. It seems he finds her doting somewhat annoying. I've got a business trip this weekend, so I can't go. While surprised by the sudden news, it wasn't the first time. So I simply replied, "Oh, is that so? Because of the business trip, we won't be able to visit them." However, the thought of having to call and explain this to her, given her persistence, is daunting. So, he seemed displeased. Well, she won't be satisfied unless I say it myself. I'll call her later. Thanks, I appreciate it. There's a chance she might just show up here, so could you maybe go out with Kevin, just in case? I pondered over his words for a moment. He's supposed to be leaving for a business trip on Friday. If that's the case, and Kevin also wants it, maybe it's a good idea to visit my parents' house. After discussing it with Kevin, we decided to head to their house right after he got back from school. Yay! I'm so happy I get to see Grandpa and Grandma there. His face lit up with joy. For his smile, I can endure calling her. Seeing him so happy made me think that. A few days after spending the weekend at my parents' house. It's been a while, Emily. Do you have time to listen to a bit of my rant? Yeah, sure. One day, I got a call from Lisa. Ideally, she'd like to meet on a day when I'm off from my part-time job, but it might be difficult if she's coming from the countryside. As I was thinking about how to arrange it. Actually, I've moved to New York and I'm here now. She surprised me with that news. It turns out, Lisa lives not too far from my area. So, we decided to meet at a nearby cafe. You should have told me sooner. I said as soon as we met at the cafe, to which Lisa smiled. Sorry, I've been so busy with starting my own business. It seems she finally started her own business about 10 years ago. Since then, she's been busy stabilizing her business performance. And I hear childcare is tough. I didn't want to impose. You shouldn't worry about it. Emily, you're too kind. You'd sacrifice your own convenience for others. If I said I wanted to meet, you'd try to make it happen. Even if it's tough for you. That's why I couldn't just bring it up. I smiled bitterly at her words. She hit the nail on the head. So, what's the rant about? It's about my boyfriend. Apparently, she's been dating this boyfriend for 10 years. They even spent last weekend together at her place. We talked about marriage then. But he didn't agree. And that's not the only thing she's unhappy about. Wait, he has a kid? Yeah, that's not a problem for me. Single parents are common these days. It turns out he is a single father with a 10-year-old son. However, he hasn't introduced her to his son. I really want to move forward with our marriage talks, considering our age. I at least want to meet his son. Did you tell him that? Of course, but he keeps saying eventually and it never goes anywhere. She seemed serious about this. She wants to move forward because they're seriously dating. I could tell that's how she felt. By the way, what's this boyfriend like? He's a gentleman. He works as a manager at a big company nearby. His son's name is Kevin, I think. At those words, I felt a jolt. The description she gave of her boyfriend matched John exactly. He did say he was going on a business trip over the weekend. I hadn't thought much of it before, but is it normal to have sudden business trips on weekends, which are typically days off? With that thought in mind, I desperately tried not to show my anxiety as I asked Lisa. "What's his name?" "John," she said. Hearing that, I fell silent. It was almost certain, given that all the characteristics matched. "Emily? What's wrong?" "It's nothing," I replied. I couldn't bring myself to share my thoughts with her. I was afraid of causing a rift in my relationships with John and Lisa. How could this happen? From then on, I was lost in thought. Could it be that they were having an affair? But Lisa believes John is a single father. Is he deceiving her, or is she lying? The more I dwelled on it, the more my mood sank. How did the two of them even meet in the first place? As I was pondering this, I received a call from Kate. "Emily, you're no longer needed," she said. "What?" "Give up your custody of Kevin and divorce John. He already has someone better suited for him." Those words hit me like a physical blow. The image of Lisa came to mind. She's a lady of such elegance that you could never compare. It must be about her. She continued to press on while I remained silent. She would make a better mother for my grandson. Withdraw for Lisa's sake. She thinks John is single, and your existence is in the way. Listening to her, something inside me broke. And what flashed through my mind were John's actions up to this point. Mom expects a lot from you. That's why she sometimes speaks harshly. He never once defended me from the insults hurled by Kate. Childcare is supposed to be your duty as a stay-at-home mom, right? He barely participated in household chores or childcare. I'm home. Try not to upset Mom too much, okay? Even when I was kicked out of his parents' house, he didn't contact me and casually returned the next day. Recalling his actions that I had endured despite feeling uncomfortable, I suddenly felt my affection for him waning. And on top of everything, he deceived my dear friend and betrayed me. This isn't something a human does. And so, I could no longer see John as a human being. That changed my perception of him. As usual, I made dinner, and after Kevin went to bed, I started washing the dishes. "I'm home," a voice said at that moment. At that moment, I heard a voice. That voice belonged to something that entered the living room. "What's for dinner tonight?" As it approached me, saying that, I, who no longer even saw it as human, didn't respond. Then I quickly washed the dishes and headed to the bedroom to go to sleep. Hey, Emily? What's wrong?" That noisy something followed me, nagging. Annoyed, I ignored it and went into the bedroom, closing the door behind me. I have my part-time work tomorrow and need to get to bed early. I have no time to deal with that nuisance. After that, I continued to ignore the noisy something. Meals were prepared only for Kevin and me. Laundry left by that something remained untouched. I went about my chores as usual, paying no attention to the nuisance. "Emily, I don't know what you're mad about, but don't ignore me." Something tangled with me with a somewhat frantic voice. As usual, it was so annoying, but I was living my life as normal. "I don't know what you did, but it's probably your fault anyway." "What?" "I didn't do anything." "It's all Emily, one-sidedly." "It doesn't matter. I'm on Mom's side." Kevin was talking to that nuisance, but I didn't care. At most, I marvel at how he even bothers to talk. That's the extent of my feelings. "Mom, I'll help." "So, you rest." "Thank you, Kevin." I couldn't help but adore him, who was always concerned about me. Smiling at such a sweet Kevin. This can't go on. It's bad for his upbringing. I'll set up a time for us to talk. Suddenly, that something declared. Ignoring the something that started contacting someone, I continued with my chores as usual. Then, I'll call Grandpa and Grandma on Mom's side. Kevin, sensing my crisis, called my parents in response to the nuisance's actions. And so, a meeting was set up between our family and that group of nuisances. "How dare you ignore John? Who do you think you are?" A hysterical shout from something arrogant. I couldn't perceive her as anything but a nuisance. Before we start talking, there's someone else I'd like to call. My father said that and contacted someone on his mobile phone. Responding to that call was, "How dare you deceive both me and Emily?" It was my best friend, Lisa. She glared at the startled nuisance. "Why is she here?" As I wondered, my father explained. "A few days ago, Kevin told me something was wrong with you. So, I had a detective I know look into it. As a result, it was discovered that a certain John and Lisa were in a relationship. When he asked her, it became clear that she too had been deceived by something. It seems she was contacted because a meeting was suddenly arranged. And that's why she showed up today, ready to confront the situation. Of all people, to be involved with my best friend Emily's husband." "Calm down, Lisa. Don't you dare address me so casually. You're in on this too, aren't you?" Then her torrent of confessions began. Lisa met that noisy something through a dating app, it seems. They met there, and on their first meeting, that something told her he was a single father with a child. "And yet you had the audacity to say you wanted to marry me if I was okay with that. I thought you were sincere. But you're just the worst kind of man." "Well, that is..." Stared down by Lisa, that something mumbled and stumbled over his words. It seems he couldn't find any words to counter. "So, you pretended to be someone else to get close to Lisa. Were you planning to take only Kevin if things went south?" "Well, I suppose she would have made a fuss if you had to give up Kevin." My mother muttered that. I could sense her simmering anger. "Emily, I'm truly sorry. I had no idea John was your husband," Lisa said. I smiled warmly at her. "Don't worry about it. As far as I'm concerned, I no longer have a husband." I noticed the noisy something startle at my words. Pointing at that noisy something? "To me, that's just a nuisance," I said with a smile. Lisa looked shocked at my words. But then she quickly murmured, "Ah. I've always been known to be kind to those around me. I've always lent a hand when someone was in trouble and given in during arguments. I thought it was okay for me to bear the burden. I could endure more than others. If that made everyone happy, then it was fine. That was my belief. You're kind and always endure, but when you reach your limit, you become scarier than anyone." I could see the confusion in their faces at her words. And she gave them a cold look. "You've been taking advantage of her kindness all this time, making her endure so much." Then, there was a tipping point that brought her to her limit. She reached a point where she could no longer recognize you as a human being. She explained this on my behalf. And she's right. I've come to think of him and my in-laws as nothing more than a nuisance. I can no longer see you as human. "So, you're ignoring me because of that?" At my words, the nuisance said in a trembling voice. "That's cruel, isn't it? What are you talking about? If what Mom did was bad, doesn't that make your actions up to now even worse?" At that moment, Kevin, who was supposed to be in another room, showed his face. And the nuisance muttered, "What are you talking about?" "Because Dad, you ignored Mom when she was in trouble, didn't you?" "That's not." "Then why were you laughing when Grandma was yelling at Mom? Even when she was kicked out, you were just drinking with Grandpa. Despite me repeatedly asking you to help Mom, you did nothing." Kevin ran up to me and glared at the nuisance in front of us. "You were the first one to start ignoring, wasn't he?" "That's..." At that moment, Lisa stroked Kevin's head. Her eyes praised Kevin, as if to say, "Well said. So this is how Emily has been treated all this time. I understand very well now. How could you treat someone's daughter like that?" "Don't worry, Emily. We'll make sure to get child support from him for you." Lisa and my mother glared at the nuisance. Then, my father said, "I can't leave my precious daughter with a man like you. Sign this. I want to make things right with Emily. Even after seeing my daughter, who can no longer recognize you as human." The nuisance started trembling. I felt his gaze on me from time to time, but it must have been my imagination. "This ingrate. Kevin is our precious heir. You're not taking him with you." "Heir? What do you even have in your family? Shouldn't his wishes be the priority anyway? The woman was ranting, but Mom shut her down. The men seemed to be kept at bay by Dad's glare. Not stopping your wife's actions, not even trying to look. How pathetic for a man. I had no choice. She wouldn't listen to me. Kevin, you'd prefer to be with me, right? In response to the woman, Kevin gripped my hand and glared. I don't want to be treated like a little kid. I want to be with Mom. He declared firmly. When did he become so dependable? I stroked his head. Emily. I'm sorry. After that, he and I didn't exchange words. To me, his existence was like it wasn't even there. All I felt was the nuisance quieting down. Mom? Yes? What kind of person was Dad in your heart? Kevin asked, and I looked around. The husband in my heart was no longer there, and it took me a moment to even remember. Well, he was selfish, I guess. Selfish. So, you don't like him anymore? How can I like someone who doesn't exist in this world? At my words, I thought I heard someone cry. But I felt nothing seeing it. I'm really sorry. I didn't realize I had driven you to this point. It's too late for regrets. I hate you and everyone else who bullied Mom to this extent. At those words, the woman screamed. Stop yelling. You're really annoying. She told the nuisance with annoyance. John. I truly loved you and was serious about our marriage and children. Lisa. That's why I will never forgive you for this. Never show your face to Emily or me again. The nuisance mumbled an acknowledgement, head bowed, at Lisa's words. After that, the nuisance who was once my husband and I divorced. I was going to return to my parents' home, where they told me to take a break for a while. Of course, Kevin would be with me. I'll never forgive you. I'll make sure to squeeze every penny out of you. Lisa seemed to have arranged with the lawyer, Owen, to claim child support on my behalf. She apologized to me for everything that happened. I'm really sorry. I ended up destroying your family. So, don't apologize so much. Lisa, you did nothing wrong. It makes me wonder why she was dating him without any questions in the first place. It was simply because she didn't know the person I was married to. When I was dating him, she was still in our hometown, so I never bothered to introduce them. It's not like we didn't meet because I didn't talk about it much. And I didn't ask much about it either. The wedding was a small affair, just close family. At that time, she was busy with her startup and couldn't make it to meet him. That's why she didn't know what my husband looked like or his name. And then I enthusiastically used a dating app, only to end up like this. She said this with a wry smile. None of this was her fault. Despite that, she apologized sincerely and repeatedly. Well, how about in exchange for forgiveness, you remain my best friend from now on? Of course. I should be the one asking you. She said, and I smiled at her. She, with tears in her eyes, nodded in agreement. Our friendship remained unchanged. Meanwhile, the person who was John couldn't gain custody and returned to his parents' home. Rumors started circulating that he had cheated with his wife's best friend, leaving him with no place to go, and he eventually quit his job. I heard he's now cooped up at his parents' home. What's utterly unforgivable is that he started using the dating app because you got pregnant. According to Lisa, he resorted to cheating because I was pregnant. Being pregnant meant I couldn't attend to him as before, and he used that as an excuse to indulge in affairs. Certainly, that's inexcusable. Emily, don't you feel angry towards John? Yeah, I still can't even recognize this John human being. It seems this incident has taken a significant toll on my mental health. I still can't see them as human beings. The doctor told me not to rush and to heal slowly. Kevin told me. You were treated terribly by your in-laws. He apparently felt frustrated every time he saw me being mistreated by them. He felt helpless because he was a child and couldn't protect his mother. Maybe that's why he matured faster than his peers. Maybe that's why he's been a bit clingy lately. Oh, that's adorable. Now, he holds my hand wherever we go. And when I pat his head, he giggles, which is just adorable. Even so, he's declared that from now on, he'll be the one to protect me and he wants to start learning wrestling. Really, Kevin is so manly. I wish I had a boyfriend like him. She said this, her spirits dipping. Being deceived this time might have been partly because she was feeling rushed, with me getting married and pregnant. We need to hone our ability to judge men better. Ha, I'm rooting for you. I haven't told her yet, but I received a message from the people who were once my in-laws. The message demanded that we send Kevin over. It seems they are still fixated on the idea of him being the heir. I'm not an heir. I don't want to inherit anything from those people. Thanks to Kevin's firm stance, they became disheartened and stopped contacting us. Seeing how reliable he has become, I've realized I need to change too. Not just enduring, but gaining the strength to confront issues head-on. That's what I've decided. Emily, I heard you're going to start working. Yes, I'm going to give it my all starting today. After taking a break from my part-time job to fully rest my mind and body, with the doctor's permission, I decided to start working. Even with child support, it's important for me to provide for Kevin. So, you're going to work as an office clerk, right? That's right. Owen offered me the position. I'm going to work at the law office of Owen, who has been very helpful during this time. Owen has been keeping an eye on me and regularly visits. Through this connection, I ended up working at his place. Somehow, thinking about starting work makes me feel excited. Surely, working full-time will demand different tasks from me than my part-time job did. Still, the idea of starting something new has me excited. It's a shame, though. I wanted to hire you. But he got you first. She said this with a slightly pouty smile. I had thought she would definitely hire me. But I wanted a change. Staying with Lisa might make me too dependent on her. So, I decided to take Owen's offer to avoid that. By the way, you know, John's parents' house was sold recently. Apparently, the in-laws, who had pushed all the blame onto John, forcefully kicked him out even though he was a shut-in. However, the neighbors caught the whole scene. Already viewed as a family that harassed their daughter-in-law, they became even more disliked for kicking out their beloved son. Unable to bear the disdain, they sold the house and fled. Well, in the end, they messed up wherever they went, and now they're reportedly homeless. Ultimately, his in-laws couldn't change. That probably led to the dire outcome of becoming homeless. As for John, he seems to have disappeared. Actually, I know where he is. Afterwards, a letter from him arrived at our house. Initially, I couldn't bring myself to open it, but after recovering, I finally read it the other day. I truly am sorry. That's why I will live my life just for Kevin's child support, out of your sight, the letter said. Including a photo of John taken at an international airport. He seems to be planning to struggle alone in a foreign land where no one knows him and he doesn't speak the language. Do you know anything, Emily? No, I don't know anything. He might be cornered just like I was. But it's no longer my concern. And so, I decided to forget about John. Mom, are you done talking? Yes, we're done. Then help me with my homework. There's something I don't understand. Kevin said this as he pulled my hand. To protect this child's smile, I don't have time to dwell on John. After that, Owen and I got into a good relationship, and we started dating. Kevin also became attached to him, who always respects my decisions. When you're with him, Mom, you really look happy when you smile. That's why I'm happy too. Kevin told me this, and he also thanked him for making me smile. I was so moved that I almost cried with him. By the way, he continues to practice wrestling. His desire to protect me has now turned into a desire to protect others. I want to become a police officer who helps people in trouble, just like Mom. With that in mind, he is diligently working towards his dream. On the other hand, it seems that Lisa has finally found her happiness. Actually, one of my classmates confessed to me. This classmate is someone I also know, and it seems he has liked Lisa since high school. But back then, she was out of his league. So, he decided to work hard until he felt worthy of her. And it seems he came to see her after hearing her story. Hee, that's wonderful. Yes. I'll make sure to find happiness this time. And of course, you have to be happy too, Emily. Yes, of course. This time, we will both strive to truly find happiness. We made that promise to each other. By the way, you've really started to smile genuinely. Yeah. I've decided not to hold back like before. It's made things a lot easier. That's good to hear. I've learned something from my experiences with John, too. I thought it was enough if only I made sacrifices. That mindset ended up worrying Kevin as well. For the sake of my dear child, I'll limit my sacrifices and aim for happiness. With that in mind, I embarked on a new chapter in my life. Emily, I'm sorry, but I really need you to come up with some money this time. I absolutely need a substantial amount for the business. Please. I refused, saying, I can't come up with such a large sum of money. Then I was met with an unreasonable and demeaning response, what? Your husband is in trouble, and you won't help him? Isn't that too harsh? If you don't have the cash, why don't you just take out a loan or something? Emily, you really lack consideration. That's why you're such a pushover. Being cheated on for 10 years. Tears started to flow. If only I had been a bit stronger, I wouldn't have put Michelle through this. Michelle shook her head and gently stroked my body. It's not your fault, Mom. The bad one is Dad. I can't forgive Dad for making you sad. I'll make him regret it. I was greatly moved by Michelle's words. Daniel, you might not know this, but Michelle was born with something wonderful. You used Michelle as an excuse for your infidelity. I really can't forgive you. After 20 years of marriage, and on your birthday, we'll celebrate grandly with Michelle. It will surely be a splendid hell. Looking forward to it. My name is Emily, a 44-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Daniel and our 17-year-old daughter Michelle. Daniel and I met 20 years ago. We were colleagues who joined the company in the same year. Despite being called a difficult time to find employment, from an initial group of 7, it was just the 2 of us left after a year. Until last week, our closest colleague, Sarah, had been working hard as well. Sarah pushed herself to the limit but reached her breaking point. I wanted to work more with you, Emily and Daniel. But, it seems I can't anymore. You two keep up the good work. That's what she said before she left the company. The workload given to new employees was harsh, and I often thought about quitting. Having a father who ran his own company, I occasionally entertained the thought of maybe I should help with my dad's business. However, going out for drinks after work with Daniel and venting about our frustrations helped us keep going. Eventually, Daniel and I naturally started dating. We felt comfortable together and respected each other. Being with Daniel felt like a reward for enduring the tough job. I thought this feeling was one-sided, but Daniel also said, I'm really glad I worked hard. Because I got to be your boyfriend. It was a moment when I felt our feelings were mutual. After 2 years of dating, we got married. 3 years into our marriage, our daughter Michelle was born. Wow, doesn't Michelle look just like me? Look, she's making the same face I did when I was a baby. Daniel said, adoringly, when Michelle was born. Back then, Daniel was also enthusiastic about parenting. Daniel wanted to show Michelle all the beautiful things in the world, and we took her to scenic places when she was young. However, our utmost happiness was short-lived when a concern arose when Michelle turned 3. One day, when I went to pick up Michelle from daycare. I did a story reading today, but Michelle asked questions about everything she wondered in the story. It's good to be curious. But it made it hard to continue the reading. That's what Ms. Miller, the preschool teacher, told me. There were other comments too. When Michelle gets absorbed in drawing or reading books, she doesn't respond even if called. The other day, she kept drawing and ignored her meal. How is she at home? I was so struck by the accuracy of these observations that I was at a loss. At home too, Michelle would sometimes not touch her food when engrossed in something. When I consulted Daniel about it, he said, maybe Michelle's development is delayed. You know, Emily, you also have that tendency, right? She must have taken after you, he said with a laugh. I was shocked by Daniel's words as if I had been hit with a blunt object. Even though I knew it was Daniel's usual way of teasing me, it was still irritating. And it seemed too early to conclude that Michelle's development was delayed. It's fine though. Michelle is so cute. Lucky Michelle, you look like me, so you'll grow up to be a beauty. If you looked like your mom, you'd be a sure orangutan. It seemed Daniel thought that a 3-year-old Michelle wouldn't understand what he was saying. I hugged Michelle, who was looking at Daniel puzzled. Daniel didn't know. Michelle is much smarter than he thinks. When Daniel wasn't around, Michelle would say to me, "Mom, you are cute." It's mean to say orangutan, right? Dad is handsome. But maybe his personality isn't the best. I won't tell him, though, speaking surprisingly maturely for her age. This continued while Michelle was in daycare. Due to my worries, I decided to consult a pediatrician before Michelle started elementary school. I shared Michelle's behaviors and actions at daycare and was advised to have her tested at a specialized hospital. Michelle and I went for the test, clutching the referral letter to measure her intelligence. The result was shocking. Mom, Michelle's IQ is 170, she has an IQ of 170. Michelle was identified as gifted. I knew such children existed from magazines and news. But I never dreamed my own child would be gifted. I was uncertain about whether to share this fact with Michelle herself. But the doctor who conducted the test explained it to her in an understandable way. Michelle just listened and said, So I wasn't sure if she understood the situation at that time. However, on the way back from the hospital, Michelle looked up at me, holding my hand, and said, "Mom, don't tell Dad, okay?" It's said that gifted children understand things quicker than others, but at the age of 6, Michelle seemed to have grasped her situation. When our marriage got into 10 years, Daniel talked about quitting his job and starting his own business. Your dad built his company from scratch, right? I want to do the same. Daniel mentioned he was seeking advice from my father and began visiting my childhood home. When I first heard about his independence, I was honestly shocked. Michelle was still in elementary school, and I was worried about our future finances. However, my parents thought highly of Daniel for coming to them earnestly for advice. Daniel talked sincerely about his future plans. He said he decided to go independent, thinking about the future of you and Michelle. If that's the case, I'm willing to support him. Your happiness is what matters most. My dad said happily and offered to help fund Daniel's independence. With such support, Daniel successfully became independent and started his own business. Since then, Daniel hardly came home. He was busy with his new venture, and I focused on keeping our home while continuing my job. Nobody except me knows about Michelle being gifted. Daniel still seems to think Michelle's development is delayed. According to Michelle, that's fine. Dad feels safer thinking I'm a bit slow, she said. Indeed, Daniel tends to choose who he's with. His pride keeps him from associating with those he perceives as superior to himself. Probably, that's one reason he wanted to start his own business. He looks down on me a little. Michelle understood Daniel's personality and acted accordingly. Then, one day, Daniel said something unexpected. It's because I've just started my own business and things are really busy, so I rented an apartment near the company. It was a post facto explanation. It was curious where he got the money for the apartment, but it turned out that my father had lent Daniel one of his own properties. I thought it was another case of both of them being too soft on Daniel, but what was done was done. From then on, as if it were only natural, Daniel stopped coming home. Even when I suggested going to clean the apartment from time to time, he said, "I only go back there to sleep late at night, so it's not messy," refusing to let me in. Not only that, but Daniel also stopped contributing financially to our home. The cash flow is tight right now. It's just for the beginning. Once things get on track, I'll contribute properly. I'll even spoil you with luxury. I wasn't interested in luxury. Yet, wanting to support Daniel, I managed to get by on just my salary. Relying on Michelle's maturity, I even started working more overtime to support our household. As I often had to leave her alone at home, I provided Michelle with a phone. It was an old device I had used before, now fitted with a new SIM card. Don't worry, I won't use any harmful sites. I've set up GPS and security, so it's safe. Michelle quickly mastered the use of the phone. Then, she suggested, shouldn't we also put GPS on Dad's phone? I didn't understand why Michelle would suggest that. To be precise, I pretended not to understand. Dad just goes back and forth between his company and the apartment. Sometimes he comes home, but that's like once a month, right? What's the point of putting GPS on Dad's phone? I said this to Michelle, but really, I was trying to convince myself. Michelle then said, with a wistful smile, Mom really trusts Dad, huh? Michelle is perceptive. It was as if she could see right through me. Of course, there were uncertainties. I often wondered where Daniel was and what he was doing when he didn't come home. Yet, the fact that Daniel chose me was a source of pride for me. Michelle, it's okay. Mom and Dad understand each other well. I said this and hugged the young Michelle. I must have shown my anxiety in front of Michelle. Being keen, Michelle must have picked up on my emotions and was worried. I reflected on my actions. Even if Michelle is gifted, she is still a young child. I vowed not to cause Michelle any more worry. And then, 10 years passed since Daniel's independence, marking 20 years of marriage. Before I knew it, Michelle was 17. Though Michelle was exceptional, she didn't go to a particularly high-ranked school but chose a correspondence high school instead. I thought it was a wise decision on her part. Michelle had always been considerate in her interactions with others, holding back her opinions to read the room. Being a student involves continuous communication. Michelle, aware of her giftedness, feared that being her true self might lead to conflicts and hurt others. People might think I'm running away, but that's okay. The correspondence course suits my dream better. I want to become a lawyer or a mystery writer. Michelle seemed content with her life. Daniel remained the same. Despite promising luxury 10 years into his business venture, he had not contributed to household expenses even once. Instead, he had started asking me for money a few years ago. Most of them were requests for a few $100s, so I had been giving Daniel the money from my own funds. Emily, I'm sorry, but I really need you to come up with some money this time. I absolutely need a substantial amount for the business. Please. Despite continuous support from my father, it was a mystery why he was always short on funds. I refused, saying, I can't come up with such a large amount of money. He would retort, what? You won't help your husband in trouble? That's too harsh. If you don't have the money, why don't you take out a loan? Emily. You're so unhelpful. That's why you're a fool. His comments were unreasonable and demeaning. Daniel knows that I dislike borrowing money. So, this was his way of indirectly asking me to funnel money from my father through me. Daniel's company is already receiving assistance from my father. Due to his pride, Daniel couldn't bring himself to ask for more help directly. That's why he demands it from me. He probably thinks that if I ask, my father would provide the funds. I understood Daniel's intentions, but I also thought it was quite something for me to comply. Of course, I couldn't possibly ask my father for more financial support. Reluctantly, I had no choice but to dip into the savings I had set aside for Michelle's future. Michelle, with her keen intuition, quickly caught on to this. I can't stand to see Mom struggling for Dad. He neglects us all the time, but only comes to us for money. That's the worst. Michelle was quite angry with Daniel. Daniel used to take Michelle to his apartment frequently when she was in lower elementary school. Though he stopped visiting home, he seemed to still hold affection for his daughter. However, from around the time Michelle turned 10, their meetings were only outside. Mom, I think you really need to think about your future with Dad. No matter what happens, I'll be with you, so don't worry. Michelle's suggestion was understandable. For the past 10 years, we were practically living separately. Moreover, Daniel didn't contribute to household expenses but kept asking for money. Maybe it's time to seriously consider our future, as Michelle suggested. While pondering these thoughts, I received a message from Daniel. Again, the message was a request for money. Initially, Daniel would come in person, looking apologetic as he borrowed money. But over time, he shifted to phone requests. Then to specifying bank transfers. Now, he merely sends brief messages like, "Please transfer the money by Monday." Honestly, I have no more money to give Daniel. It's not just about the shortage of funds, but I no longer feel any sincerity from Daniel. I decided I needed to talk to Daniel and headed to his apartment. Today was a holiday, and Daniel's office should be closed. I figured he would be at home if I went in the morning. I chose not to inform him in advance, fearing he might just ask for money again, so I went unannounced. I had never visited the apartment before and got the location from my father. I left after confirming Michelle had gone to the library, thinking she might try to stop me. Daniel's apartment was located near the business district. There's a subway station nearby, and with plenty of greenery, the scenery looks appealing. I could see why he might find it hard to return to the suburbs. It seemed I somewhat understood why Daniel seldom came home. His room was on the top floor of the building. Since my father owned the building, I had the access code to the autolock from him. I didn't know Dad owned such a nice property. I thought to myself as I rode the elevator up and pressed the buzzer at Daniel's room. When there was no answer, I pressed again. And this time, I felt someone approaching from inside. It was morning, so he might have been sleeping. Feeling guilty, I stared at the door as someone opened it. Huh? I couldn't help but let out a gasp at the sight of the person who answered the door. It wasn't Daniel. I instinctively ran to the corner of the hallway. I couldn't see her face clearly, but it was definitely a woman. Daniel was living with another woman. I just took the elevator down as I was. The possibility of Daniel cheating wasn't entirely out of the question. But I never imagined he could be living with someone else. With my head still in a daze, I went home. When I got home, Michelle was there. Michelle approached me with a stern look on her face. "Mom, where have you been?" "You're as pale as a ghost," she said. Thinking that I shouldn't worry Michelle, I responded with a forced smile. "I just went for a little walk. The weather was so nice." But immediately, Michelle interjected. "A walk? You went all the way to the business district for a walk?" Her words made me realize. Why did Michelle know that I had gone towards the business district? "Sorry, I've also put GPS on your phone. You went to Dad's apartment, didn't you? You found out the truth, didn't you?" Hearing Michelle's words, I slumped onto the couch, powerless. And then, I spoke to Michelle, who was sitting next to me. "Michelle. I'm okay, so can you tell me everything?" When I said that, Michelle nodded deeply. I remember it vividly. I must have been about 2 years old. Dad took me out and there was a stranger woman there. When Michelle was young, Daniel often took her for walks in her stroller. He used to say to me, "You must be tired from taking care of her every day, so just relax at home." Sometimes it was the same woman, sometimes it was a different one. It seems Dad has been seeing various women from the past. Just when I thought he was taking good care of Michelle, it was all an excuse to meet women. Normally, memories from around the age of 2 would be forgotten. But Michelle is gifted. With her exceptional memory, she remembers it all even now. When Dad became independent and lived in an apartment near his office, I was taken there several times. And there was always a woman there too. Dad thought I was not smart enough to understand, so he didn't think I'd mind the presence of an unknown woman. That woman was always at that apartment. Michelle then took out a phone. It was the phone I had given her when she was still little. She turned on the phone and showed me several photos. Dad has been with this woman for 10 years. I was astonished by the photos. Sarah. There, Sarah, who was once our colleague, was pictured looking cozy with Daniel. The photos were dated regularly every year for the past 10 years. To think I've been cheated on for 10 years. These were the photos Michelle had been taking all along. I wonder what Michelle, with her superior understanding, thought when she knew the truth about Daniel. And what she felt as she continued to take these photos. Just the thought made my heart ache. "Michelle, I'm sorry for putting you through this." Tears started to flow. If only I had been more attentive, I wouldn't have caused Michelle such pain. Michelle shook her head and gently rubbed my back. "It's not your fault, Mom. The bad one is Dad. I can't forgive Dad for making you sad. I'll make him regret it. Michelle's words made me react strongly. Make him regret it? It sounded ominous, but frankly, my curiosity overwhelmingly prevailed. Dad, that woman, they're planning to go on a trip soon. Look, isn't Dad's birthday coming up soon? It's a celebration trip. That woman posted it on her SNS. She's so desperate for approval, isn't she? Michelle seemed somewhat excited. There must be some plan to teach him a lesson. I listened to Michelle's continuation of the story. Why should only his mistress celebrate our dad's birthday? How about we celebrate it grandly too, from us? Before I knew it, my tears had stopped. I'm so grateful that Michelle is my daughter. Though, this wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't met Daniel. I suppose I can at least thank Daniel for bringing Michelle into my life. Thinking about it, it's quite something that after 20 years of marriage, he's cheerfully planning a trip with his mistress. I'd like to ask Daniel, who always begs me for money, how he managed to scrape together the funds for this trip. Even now, messages from Daniel like, "Did you transfer the money?" are arriving on my phone. I'm sorry, but it's unlikely that Daniel will receive any more transfers from me going forward. Maybe it wouldn't have felt so bad if the mistress was a complete stranger. Of all people, why did it have to be Sarah, our former colleague? Looking at the photos of them on Michelle's phone, I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. Daniel, you thought we knew nothing and did as you pleased all this time. You married me for my father's wealth, didn't you? Weren't you supposed to provide us with a luxurious life after becoming independent? I'm not interested in luxury, but I would appreciate it if you didn't make promises you can't keep. You might not know this, but Michelle was born with something wonderful. From a young age, she witnessed your infidelity, and yet, to avoid hurting me, she kept your infidelity to herself. She's such a kind child. You used Michelle as an excuse for your infidelity. You said, "I want to show Michelle all the beautiful things," but contrary to your words, it seems you've shown her quite a lot of ugliness. It's unforgivable. After 20 years of marriage, I'll be sure to celebrate your birthday grandly with Michelle. It will surely be a beautiful hell. I'm looking forward to it. Today is Daniel's birthday. Michelle and I have been in the business district since early this morning. We're heading to that infamous apartment of Daniel's. Mom, no matter how emotional you get, make sure Dad doesn't find us. Michelle reminded me repeatedly. Looking at the photos, my heart stirs, even though I know better. Seeing Daniel and Sarah together in person, can I really remain calm? That's why Michelle is with me today. As we hid in the bushes on the apartment grounds, Michelle said, "Ah, here he comes," and pushed me into the shadows of the building. There, parked on the street, was Daniel's car. Soon after, Daniel emerged from the apartment. And then Sarah appeared, following him. It's really Sarah. The two were loading large suitcases into the car. They must be heading out on a trip. I knew it. I know exactly where they're going. Mom, that Sarah lady is quite the hint dropper, huh? She's even posting on social media. Going on a trip here for his birthday, complete with photos and everything. The location Sarah posted on SNS was a beautiful place where our family of 3 had gone when Michelle was still a baby. Back then, Daniel had said, "When Michelle grows up, we must come back here, all 3 of us." Daniel, who only makes promises he can't keep, is now apparently taking his mistress there. I'm at a loss for words. Overwhelmed by anger and frustration, I couldn't think of anything. Get a grip, Mom. Come on, we're going too. Michelle said, snapping me back to reality with a pat on my back. That's right, we have to make Daniel regret it. For that very reason, I have been preparing up until today. Before I knew it, Daniel's car had already left. Michelle took me by the hand, and we started to take action. 6 hours later, Michelle and I were in a room at a certain hotel. Michelle placed a tablet on the table and opened a video site. We watched the screen intently, holding our breath. The screen showed a large open square with an atrium. There was a small stage at the front, with a grand piano nearby. This place likely hosts events regularly. There were many people coming and going, making it a bustling area. Surrounding the central square, there were eateries, with tables and benches arranged like a stylish food court. As it got later, the lights dimmed and the area was lit up, making it a popular spot. The change in lighting was visible on the screen as the day began to fade. "He's here." I glanced at the screen at Michelle's words, and what seemed to be Daniel appeared at the edge of the frame. Next to him was a woman who appeared to be Sarah. Despite their age, the two were holding hands as they arrived. Then, they sat close together on the bench. Michelle had anticipated that they would come here. "In fact, I led them here by anonymously commenting on SNS, if you're staying at this hotel. I recommend visiting this spot at this time. Sarah seems to like Insta-worthy spots, so I was sure they'd come." She had analyzed Sarah's preferences by checking her SNS. The clock showed 4 p.m. Then, movement occurred on the screen as well. A man with a unique gait appeared in the middle of the square. He was made up like a clown. The clown, as if searching for something, comically strutted across the square. Eventually, he began to dance in the center of the square. Instantly, he captured the attention of the people gathered around, and spontaneous applause broke out. Daniel and Sarah seemed to be enjoying the performance. The number of dancers grew from 1 to 2, then 3, and before long, a group of dancers turned the square into a stage, performing an upbeat dance. This was a flash mob. One of the individuals was the target for a surprise performance. The first dancer, the clown, addressed the audience. "It seems he is looking for today's target." Then Michelle sent some instructions via her phone. "The green bench in the back right, towards the stage." That was where Daniel and Sarah were sitting. In the meantime, the previously upbeat music in the square changed to the sound of a piano. It was the "Happy Birthday" song. Everyone clapped along with the music, focusing on the day's target. The clown approached Daniel and Sarah in the back right. Daniel gestured as if to say, "Me?" Seeing his slightly pleased expression, I felt irritated. The clown handed Daniel a bouquet of flowers he had been hiding and shouted into a wireless microphone, "Happy birthday." At the same time, many people in the square applauded in celebration for Daniel. Daniel, not entirely displeased, waved back at everyone, getting into the spirit of things. "Now, Dad, the real fun is just beginning." The clown then took out a letter from his pocket. "I have a letter from your family," he announced, glancing at Sarah beside Daniel. The clown probably thought Sarah was his wife. Sarah looked extremely embarrassed. And Daniel made a visibly shocked expression, even through the screen. Oblivious to the situation, the clown began reading the letter with a big smile. "From your daughter, it seems. Dear Dad, happy birthday. Are you enjoying your trip today? So your daughter couldn't come with you." As the clown cheerfully read the letter, Daniel was visibly distressed. The expression on his face seemed to ask why Michelle knew about the trip. The clown continued reading without a care. "We visited this place almost 20 years ago with the family, remember? It was such a beautiful view. I still remember it. I wanted to go there with the family again, but it's a pity I couldn't." Daniel frantically gestured as if to say, "Enough already." Sarah, too, seemed eager to leave, hiding her face behind a mask. But it seemed she couldn't leave because there was a camera in front of them. The clown, slightly tilting his head, continued reading. "Please take lots of beautiful pictures of the scenery. Mom and I will be waiting at home." Huh? Looking at Sarah's face, who was averting her eyes. "Oh, and congratulations on your 20th wedding anniversary. I've sent a present to the hotel, so please accept it." "Ooh. It seems like your daughter and wife are at home. Then who is this lady?" At this point, Sarah couldn't stand it anymore. After forcing a smile for the camera, she dashed away from the scene. Left behind, Daniel stared wide-eyed in the direction Sarah had run off to. It was a rather disgraceful sight. The audience in the square also started murmuring. "Ha! The SNS is buzzing." The video was being streamed live. This flash mob was part of a project by a streamer Michelle knew. It was a popular channel, especially among viewers who enjoyed surprises and pranks. And it seemed that viewers who watched the broadcast were furiously posting on SNS. Is this a case of infidelity? The family is at home, and who is that woman? Wow, this is genuinely entertaining. The husband is in deep trouble. The broadcast seemed to be coming to an end. The screen showed the clown waving happily and Daniel with a pale face. Afterward, Daniel likely dashed off from the scene as well. He had made a fool of himself in a live broadcast to the world. Served him right. I was quite satisfied at this point, but Michelle's revenge was not over yet. Come on, Mom. It's time to move on to the next phase. I nodded deeply and stood up. Michelle and I approached a door marked 1102. We were about to knock when we heard a man and a woman were arguing inside, so we paused. Listening closely, we heard. Because you ran away there, I ended up looking even more like the bad guy. It was utterly embarrassing. It's all your fault. What are we going to do if the family finds out? It was Daniel's voice. It was to be expected, of course. We came here knowing it was Daniel's room. On closer inspection, a slipper was jammed in the door, preventing it from closing properly. No wonder their voices were leaking out. What are you talking about? Your daughter already knows we're staying here. You probably blabbed. Thinking she's too naive to understand, like you always do. It's always been that way, ever since back then. Sarah was just as defiant in her response to Daniel. From my perspective, they were both at fault. Michelle and I sighed, then opened the door and entered the room. Dad, your voices are echoing all the way down the hallway. It's such a waste to be fighting on your birthday. Instead of that, why don't we have a more constructive conversation? Daniel and Sarah were utterly shocked by Michelle's sudden appearance in the room. Whoa. Michelle. How come you're here? And Emily too. Daniel's forehead was suddenly covered in cold sweat. Sarah also contorted her face, trying to escape to the back of the room. Did you read my letter, Dad? I told you I'd send a present, didn't I? Are we not good enough for you? It's nostalgic, isn't it? This place is full of family memories. But why are you here with her? Michelle asked Daniel without any hesitation. Not wanting to appear pathetic in front of Michelle, Daniel tried to maintain his composure with a forced laugh. Oh. I just happened to come here on a business trip today. Yeah. Nostalgic, right? We all came here together in the past. Ahaha. And this person is a colleague from work. Yeah. My secretary. That's why we're here together. His attempt to stay calm was not convincing, and his excuses sounded pathetic. I couldn't help but ask Daniel. Really? Since when did Sarah become your subordinate, Daniel? You've been mostly working from home with telework, haven't you? And you still need a secretary? Daniel gave me a brief glare, then replied with a slight laugh. Since last month. Even with telework, I need a secretary for scheduling and stuff. Sarah just happened to join our company last month. Really coincidental. You seem suspicious, but there's nothing to hide. His tone became more assertive when addressing me. He just couldn't stop looking down on me. Michelle retorted to Daniel's statement. Dad, is it okay to talk to Mom like that? Do you know how much she's struggled these past 10 years? And on top of that, you cheat on her and then ask her for money. You're really the worst. Being called the worst by his daughter seemed to shock Daniel. Sarah, seeing Daniel's reaction, clicked her tongue. Dad, I know everything. This woman isn't just a secretary. You've been seeing each other for 10 years, right? I remember. When we went to the apartment, she was there, right? And she told me, you're lucky you don't look like your mom. I was young, but I thought, who is this old lady? It was so rude, I remember it clearly. At Michelle's words, Sarah grimaced and stepped forward. She probably didn't like being called old lady. She seemed ready to lunge at Michelle, so I pulled Michelle towards me. Also, Dad, you've been cheating with various people since right after you married Mom. I remember you saying you were going for a walk and then meeting up with a woman. Hearing that, Daniel looked at Michelle with a puzzled expression. As if he couldn't understand what she was saying. Wait a minute. How can you remember something from so long ago? What do you mean? Because Michelle is. Daniel looked puzzled. It's no surprise, he thinks of Michelle as a child with developmental delays. Daniel, it's the opposite. Michelle has an excellent memory. She remembers everything. That you've been meeting various women since the beginning. That you've been with Sarah for 10 years. That we all went on trips together. I said this and showed Daniel the screen of my phone. It was a photo of Daniel with Sarah. Photos taken over the past 10 years amounted to dozens. Daniel and Sarah were unable to hide their shock. All taken by Michelle. She mastered using the phone I gave her when she was 7. Even though I barely taught her how to use it. The audio is also saved, you know? Your and Sarah's vivid conversations. The audio included derogatory comments about my father, who had readily provided financial support because he was Daniel's father-in-law. After all the help, this was a terrible way to repay us. Daniel, that's enough, isn't it? Let's get a divorce. Knowing all this, I can't stay married to you. Sarah, if you want Daniel, he's all yours. Not that he was mine to begin with. Do as you please. I threw in a bit of provocation with my words. Daniel, sweating and wide-eyed, couldn't say anything in response. Sarah reacted strongly to my provocation. You're such an infuriating woman. Always have been. The only reason I endured that grueling job for a year was that it was my only option. I had to work to support my parents. You always had the escape of your father's company to flaunt in our faces. I've always been so angry at you. You, with all your privileges, I hated you. She said this through tears. Her words struck a chord, even with me. Sarah, I'm sorry if I made you feel bad back then, and I reflect on that. I always thought I could just quit my job and help with my father's business. I'm truly sorry. But that's a separate issue. I glanced at Michelle once. She nodded firmly. Then, turning back to Daniel and Sarah, I took a deep breath and let it out. Daniel, I'm going to file for divorce and claim child support for Michelle as well as repayment for all the money I've given. There will be no division of property. We don't have any assets as a couple. At the mention of repayment, Daniel's face twisted even further. Sarah's reaction was similar. However, we had irrefutable evidence on our side. There was no way he could talk his way out of this. Emily, I'm not going to pay any. I won't divorce, so I won't pay. I'll break up with Sarah. I'll return home. That should be fine, right? What he proposed was a declaration of reconciliation. What was Daniel thinking? We were already at the end of our relationship, it was over. If so, I will break up with you, Daniel. I don't need you with no money anyway. She too seemed to have a blissfully ignorant understanding. She didn't seem to know that compensation can be claimed even without a divorce. Either way, not divorcing wasn't an option for me. Dad, it's time to let Mom go. She's not your wallet. The divorce is final, struggling is futile. Daniel went up to Michelle, pleading. Michelle. You'll stay by my side, right? You'll come with Dad, right? You were always closer to me than to Mom, weren't you? Come on, Michelle. Stay with me. His voice was breaking towards the end. Daniel, who had deceived us for over 10 years, was capable of feigning tears. Dad, I told you I remember everything, right? Your affairs, asking Mom for money. Of course, I also remember that you loved me. At Michelle's words, Daniel began to cry. This time, it seemed genuine. Really? You remember? Thank you, Michelle. Let's live together from now on, okay? I'll send you to college, get you a good job. So? Let's live together, okay? Michelle? Daniel reached out to Michelle, but she brushed his hand aside. What? There's no way I could live with you. I remember very well how you hurt Mom. I decided I would never forgive you. Saying this, she came over to me. Then, after saying goodbye at the exit, she left the room. Daniel, rejected by Michelle, collapsed to his knees. Sobbing, he cried. I was about to leave the room too, but Daniel stopped me. I turned around, thinking he was surprisingly sentimental. Near the window, Sarah, having resigned to her fate, was smoking a cigarette with a distant look in her eyes. At my feet, Daniel was clinging to me. Emily, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. It's all my fault. So please, don't divorce me. Don't ask for anything. Please. I beg you. Daniel apologized, collapsing onto the carpet. If he was sorry, he shouldn't have done it in the first place. And it was concerning that his true feelings seemed to peek through his apologies. However, I had no intention of forgiving him. Unfortunately, the divorce is final. We'll discuss everything else through a lawyer. And yes, of course. I'm stopping the financial support to your company. My father saw the broadcast too. He was furious. Good luck. With that, I left Daniel's room. I hurried back to where Michelle had likely returned. From room 1102, I could hear something like Daniel's crying screams. But I didn't look back and continued straight to our room. What a family trip this turned out to be. I muttered, sighing for the last time that day. Mom, which do you prefer for lunch, pescatori or seafood pasta? It seemed Michelle was going to make lunch today. I requested pescatori. Though I thought to myself that pescatori is also seafood, I didn't mention it to Michelle. The smell from the kitchen was appetizing and whetted my appetite. 2 weeks had passed since that day. After spending one night at the hotel, Michelle and I did a little sightseeing the next day before returning home. What happened to Daniel and Sarah is unclear. At the very least, they never showed up in front of us, mother and daughter, again. According to the lawyer, Daniel is still not agreeing to the divorce. It's baffling to think what he's arguing about while living with another woman. It's likely just about the money troubles he's facing. However, it seems only a matter of time before the divorce is finalized. Regardless, we plan to collect money from him properly. My father also seems to have various claims against Daniel. I've caused trouble for my father this time. I'm thinking of taking Michelle to visit our family home sometime soon. Daniel's company, cut off from my father's financial support, is apparently on the verge of bankruptcy. Sarah's SNS has blown up. She was being bashed online along with Daniel. The once assertive Sarah initially fought back but has now locked her account and is in hiding. While looking into Dad's affairs, I found out he's been fooling around with several other women over the past 10 years, besides Sarah. All of them said they didn't know he was married. Really, what is he doing? Michelle brought the finished pasta to the table. The large shrimp looked incredibly delicious. In the end, we never told Daniel that Michelle is gifted. Honestly, at this point, it doesn't really matter. Gifted or not, Michelle remains my precious daughter, and that won't change. However, for this incident, I am grateful for Michelle's remarkable memory. And Michelle, who came up with the flash mob strategy, is a bit scary. I'm profoundly relieved that she's on my side. Today might be a significant day where Michelle's dream could come true. Nowadays, it's convenient to check results online, unlike in the past. That's when I realized something. Right, no matter what, you are going to be a teacher, aren't you? Michelle is laughing beside me. Mom, you're getting ahead of yourself. Maybe teacher in training is more like it? I laughed too. It's almost time for the results to come out. Michelle taps on her phone screen. It's okay, as long as we don't give up, the dream will surely come true. A few minutes later, a teacher in training is born. The new chapter in our lives is about to start. My husband cheated on me with my sister and apparently, they have a child together. Since she is pregnant, let's get a divorce. My sister, called Sarah, is also living in a fantasy world and it's impossible to talk to her. The law is fair, and those who hurt others must make amends accordingly. I'll make sure they pay for what they've done. My name is Mia, and I work for a real estate company. I married John, whom I've been dating since college, at the age of 27, and I believe I've been leading a fulfilling life. To be honest, I must admit, I lack feminine qualities. Having learned about hierarchies and seniority in sports teams, and mastering the art of navigating through them, I believe I'm utilizing my strengths in sales. Never would I have imagined that someone like me, who loves sports and lacks femininity, would end up dating a man in college and getting married as a working adult. John and I got close after taking the same lecture in college, and that's how our relationship started. The relationship continued, and while I worked in sales at a real estate company, he began working as a temporary employee at a local public organization. It's great that we both found jobs. I've been curious, though, why did you decide to work for a public organization? Were you interested in it? Nah, not really. I just wanted to work somewhere chill. I couldn't understand his mindset for a moment. I'm not really cut out for sales. And working as a temp in a public organization might lead to a permanent position, so I thought it'd be good. Choosing a job with such a casual attitude was something I never knew people did. At the time, discovering this new side of John was something I considered a positive. That's interesting. We work in different places, but let's do our best. Despite both of us being new to working life and struggling, our relationship smoothly progressed to the point where he proposed. "Mia, will you marry me?" "Yes, I'd be happy to." The proposal felt like a dream scenario that only happened in dramas, and I couldn't help but shed tears. Keeping the top sales position in a male-dominated real estate company was partly thanks to John's support. Though continuing to work hard is great, I've also been fantasizing about how fun life could be with children of our own. One day, while having lunch at work, I received an email. The sender was my older sister, Sarah. Sarah was everything I wasn't: cute, graceful, and the epitome of femininity. Though we were different, we've always been close. How about going for afternoon tea at a hotel sometime? I also want to celebrate your company award we talked about. I had just told Sarah about being honored for maintaining the top sales performance for a year. Imagining the time spent chatting with my dear sister over tea, surrounded by jewel-like sweets. During this blissful moment, the conversation shifted to Sarah's love life. "You know, my boyfriend recently took me on a drive. He made an original album with my favorite songs. And it matched the beautiful scenery perfectly. That sounds wonderful. Where did you go for the drive?" At first glance, the conversation seemed normal, but I felt something was off after asking Sarah. I had met her boyfriend a couple of times before, but was he really like that? The person she described didn't match my memory. When I met him before, he seemed like a struggling student, or kind of nerdy. I remember him having a very studious image. Did he change his look? It's been a while since you last saw him, so yeah, you could say he's changed. Last time, you were complaining that your boyfriend seemed a bit unreliable, right? Has that changed? Was I? Maybe you're confusing him with someone else. Regardless, it's good to see Sarah happy. Lately, John has been complaining about having to work late more often. He used to come home on time, but now he often returns around 9 or 10 p.m., and sometimes he doesn't even call before taking the last bus home. Which he used to do. When I asked him to at least call because of dinner arrangements, he got irritated. Can't help it. I'm working hard as a public employee. Overtime is unavoidable, but I'd still like you to call as before. I don't have time for that. Whether I can become a permanent employee depends on this, so don't meddle. He seemed uncharacteristically angry. Was John always like this? For now, I decided it would be best to leave things be, as provoking the situation further wouldn't benefit anyone. Around that time, Sarah mentioned she wanted to talk about something important. I thought it was a good opportunity, so I suggested we grab a drink at a newly opened bar. John's been coming home late recently, so a night out is fine by me. I heard there's a new place you would like. No. I have some errands to run at night. Would it be okay if we just had tea during the day? Sarah seemed hesitant, but there must have been something on her mind. Luckily, I had some compensatory leave accumulated, so we agreed to meet at a cafe during a weekday afternoon. When I arrived, Sarah was already there, looking a bit under the weather. If you weren't feeling well, you could have told me. We could have rescheduled. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. There was something I really wanted to tell you today. I wondered what was so urgent that it couldn't wait. What is it? What's going on? I'm pregnant. I wanted to tell you first, Mia. Knowing that Sarah had always wanted to get married and have children soon, I was genuinely happy for her. Congratulations. Your boyfriend knows, right? He's been busy lately, and I don't want to bother him, so I haven't told him yet. But I need to find the right time soon. Maybe marriage is next. I'm so happy for you. I can't wait to meet your baby. I returned home filled with joy from the happy news. Since John has been coming home late recently, I decided to celebrate by myself. I bought snacks on my way home, planning to indulge in some happy drinking alone, but to my surprise, John was already home. If you were going to be home early, you should have told me. Should I make something quick for dinner for you? No, it's okay. I need to talk to you, Mia. You too? I also have something to say. Sarah, you see. Cutting off my story, he presented a piece of paper labeled as a divorce application. Is this some kind of joke? What does this mean? I've been really busy with work lately, and I feel terrible for causing you so much trouble, Mia. I think it's about time I really focused on my job and aimed for a permanent position. John was avoiding my gaze as he spoke hesitantly. Even more reason for me to support you, not for us to get a divorce. It's been tough for both of us, and I think it's time we went our separate ways. He handed me the already filled out divorce application, and I was too shocked to process anything. The joy from celebrating Sarah's pregnancy was suddenly overshadowed by this devastating news. Wait a minute. Did I do something wrong? No, it's just my selfish desire to focus on my work. I'm sorry. Where did all the happiness go? He's been busy with work and causing me trouble? He doesn't want to cause any more trouble? Perhaps due to the stress of the unexpected events, I started feeling unwell. I haven't caught a cold recently, but now I'm feeling sick. Once I'm better, let's have a proper talk, John. I hesitated due to unfinished work, but performing well was impossible under these conditions. So I decided to leave work early after consulting with my boss. Upon finally arriving home, I sensed someone's presence in the supposedly empty house. I hadn't mentioned my early departure to John. Wait, isn't John supposed to be at work today? I haven't heard anything about him working from home. Not wanting to startle anyone and thinking it might be my imagination, I quietly opened the front door, only to find a pair of women's pumps that weren't mine. Seeing the unfamiliar shoes made me uneasy. Could it be? Did he suddenly bring up divorce yesterday because he's having an affair? I approached the living room as quietly as possible, and from the other side, I could hear voices. Is that John's voice? And no way. The voice speaking with John was unmistakably Sarah's, someone I knew all too well. I've already handed over the divorce papers, so once she signs and submits them, everything should be sorted out. But what if you end up being portrayed as the bad guy and she demands alimony? Sarah whispered. For John confidently stated, his voice loud enough to be heard through the door. That's not an issue. I've already told her how sorry I am for being so busy with work and causing her trouble. Smart move. So you made it sound like the divorce is for her benefit, saying you're struggling, it's not her fault. And you believe it's best for her if you separate. That's clever. John, probably feeling good about himself with Sarah's encouragement, seemed to be breathing heavily with confidence. Yeah, well, years of working as a public employee teach you how to deal with people and navigate through situations. She probably hasn't caught on. Especially since she's always so focused on her job, John boasted. Absolutely. Even the last time we had tea together, all she could talk about was her job and sales achievements, Sarah added. I'm likely to become a permanent employee next year, so the salary will be better, and we can provide a good education for our child, John stated. Assuming his future promotion. John, still a temporary employee who can't secure a permanent position without recognition at work, seemed already convinced of his imminent promotion. My ex-boyfriend got crushed by his toxic workplace and got caught up dreaming about becoming a lawyer, always studying. I wanted him to be more independent, but meeting you has made everything better," Sarah said, which took a moment to comprehend. Sarah had a boyfriend, whom I had met a few times. Wait, did Sarah break up with her boyfriend? But what about her recent pregnancy announcement? I thought, puzzled, as I hadn't heard anything about a breakup. Pregnancy usually implies it's with the boyfriend she mentioned. But now, the voices I heard were Sarah's and John's. Could it be? The child is John's? I wondered, filled with disbelief. But I knew I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Carefully, I took out my phone and discreetly started recording. Having evidence could be useful later on. How ridiculous. I've worried myself sick for nothing, I thought, determined not to let them get away with their happiness unchallenged. I felt they needed to face appropriate consequences for their actions before I could move on. Even so, charging at them head-on as an amateur would be futile. It's best to leave it to the professionals, I concluded. It seemed they had wrapped up their conversation and casually started watching TV. With the evidence I had just recorded, I felt somewhat prepared for any eventualities. I remembered seeing a law firm sign during my sales rounds and decided to seek advice there first. What should I do about those two? I need to make a call, I thought, quietly leaving the house to avoid making any noise. After briefly explaining the situation over the phone, I was told they could see me right away as there was an available slot, so I headed straight to the law firm. It was my first visit to a law firm. A place I'd only seen in dramas and thought I'd never need to visit myself. Feeling nervous, I hesitantly opened the door to the law firm, only to be greeted by an unexpected figure. "Nathan, long time no see. But why are you here?" I asked in surprise. "Ah, you must be Sarah's sister, Mia, right? It's been a while. I was the one who answered your call, but I didn't realize it was you," Nathan explained, standing there. Nathan, Sarah's boyfriend, whom I had met a couple of times before, looked completely different from the struggling student I remembered. If I recall correctly, the last time we met was when I was still struggling with the bar exams, he mentioned. "I'm surprised. How come you're here?" Nathan scratched his head with a shy smile. "I finally passed the bar exam and managed to secure a job here." "That's great news. Congratulations. You've changed so much, I almost didn't recognize you," I complimented, genuinely impressed by his transformation. Nathan blushed slightly. "That's kind of you to say. So, what brings you to a law firm? What's the matter?" It seemed Nathan was unaware of the situation. Hesitantly, I decided to reveal everything about John and Sarah's affair, showing him the recordings and explaining the sudden divorce proposal from John, Sarah's pregnancy news, the discovery of their affair and the child's true paternity, and how Sarah referred to Nathan as her ex-boyfriend. I understand now. Indeed, I've been out of work for a while, causing trouble for Sarah. I apologize for suddenly bringing this up. Noting Nathan's conflicted expression. "Ex-boyfriend, huh? Are you still seeing Sarah?" I asked. "We were meeting, but she's been turning me down lately, and I thought something was off," Nathan explained, making me realize the miscommunication between him and Sarah. I was also busy with the bar exam, and Sarah said she was busy with work, so I reduced how often I reached out. "But I see now what was really happening," he reflected. "You didn't know about your sister or the pregnancy," I noted. "Right. She told me we might not be able to meet for a while, so I was planning to tell her about my new job once I settled in," Nathan shared, torn between his roles as Sarah's boyfriend and a new lawyer. "We might have a case with the evidence you've gathered, but it would be more solid if we ensure they can't deny it before bringing it to us," Nathan advised. I suspected as much. "The evidence might be too weak as it stands," I conceded. Nathan then offered a helpful suggestion. "Why not use a detective from a firm we work with?" It made sense, charging in with what I had might only yield a minimal settlement. If I'm not careful, I might end up not causing them any real damage. "If you recommend it, Nathan, I might consider hiring a detective," I contemplated. "I can't just sit back and do nothing," Nathan stated. It might be a roundabout way, but I decided to hire the detective firm Nathan recommended to gather more substantial evidence. The detective collected an impressive amount of evidence within a few days. Enough for Nathan to confidently say it would turn the tide in our favor. A few days later, armed with the evidence, I called John and Sarah to a diner. Telling John it was to finalize the divorce papers and telling Sarah it was to give her a pregnancy gift, which they both readily agreed to. Now that we're all here, you both know what I want to say, don't you? I began, noticing their fleeting discomfort before they regained their composure. I need to go to the hospital after this, so let's make this quick, Sarah rushed. In a position to say that? Do you understand what you've done? I countered. Sarah looked at me in shock, while John glared. I left work for this, thinking it was just the final check for the divorce papers. Enough is enough. John complained. It's not just about work, maybe you should be more concerned about something else. I hinted, pointing at Sarah's stomach. Whose child is it, Sarah? I pressed. It's Nathan's, of course. You know we've been dating. We were even talking about it possibly being time, she claimed. And what part of the divorce papers did you want me to check? I asked, before laying out the detective's findings on the table. Enough. The investigation showed the child is yours, John, I revealed. Who would say such a thing? Stop joking. Sarah scoffed, laughing dismissively. I have photos of you two at the hospital. Explain this, I demanded. Oh, so it's come to this? What's with that face? Puzzled by John's smug expression. Pregnancy means divorce. John's a public employee, and though he's non-permanent now, he'll likely become permanent, providing stability. We don't want our child to suffer financially, she continued. Sarah explained, leaning on John and speaking sweetly. It's your fault for not being feminine enough, always focused on work. I don't care about your salary or bonuses, John blamed. You think you can just hurt someone, have a child, marry, and live happily? Without even filing the divorce papers yet? I challenged. It can't be helped. The child is innocent, and you never said you wanted kids. I like children, and a moderate workload is just right for me. I did not expect John to justify himself. So, it's with Sarah, then? I had met Mia's family before, and Sarah came to my counter for work. That's when I felt it was meant to be. That's hardly a reason. Just because there's infidelity and a child doesn't mean you can just say goodbye and expect everything to be settled. I retorted, seeing John still holding onto a bold stance, perhaps thinking he could outtalk me or had some leverage. You wouldn't understand, being so mannish. A cute girl will surely be born from a gentle woman like Sarah. John shot back. Stability is what men need, right? Struggling as a student and working part-time isn't in vogue anymore. And chasing an impossible dream like becoming a lawyer is just laughable, Sarah added, dismissing the idea. I took a moment and sighed softly. It was hard to believe that my husband and my own sister held such views. Is that all you have to say? As adults, you should clean up your own mess. We'll discuss alimony and everything else through a lawyer. I stated firmly. All you talk about is money. You money grubber. You should be grateful I'm considering a divorce now, John retorted. Considering a divorce early? Cheating for no good reason and then unilaterally deciding on divorce doesn't make sense. I've already consulted a lawyer, so we'll see what happens next, I replied calmly. As I gestured slightly, Nathan approached from behind. Nathan was aware of the situation, but hearing it from the people involved must have been a shock. To think you were this kind of person. Now I see how you mocked me when I was struggling and studying, Nathan expressed his disappointment. No way, it was just a joke, just a bit of family banter. Why are you taking it so seriously? Sarah tried to downplay her words. Well, it doesn't matter. Work is work, and as the lawyer for Mia, who is seeking alimony, that's all we need to move forward, Nathan said. Making it clear it was a professional matter now. The mention of work seemed to cast a shadow over Sarah's face momentarily. What? Work? What do you mean? Stop lying, Sarah demanded an explanation. I passed the bar exam this year and am currently working at a law firm as a trainee. Nathan revealed his new status. Sarah looked as if she wanted to take her words back, but it was too late. I wanted to talk to you properly and discuss our future, waiting for the right moment, but this is a shock. If only you had told me sooner you became a lawyer. What would you have done if I told you? Pretend the affair never happened and go back to how things were. Nathan looks as if he is about to break a blood vessel in his head. It seemed ridiculous to have believed in someone with such views, as Nathan's expression suggested he felt foolish for trusting Sarah. So it's your fault for chasing your dreams and studying, leaving her alone, and that's why this happened. Are you saying it's my fault? You're confident you can make her happy, then? Nathan seemed at a loss for words, almost as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I work for an organization, and it's not like organizations go bankrupt that easily, so my future's secure. I earn a decent salary. So I can definitely make Sarah happy, John claimed confidently. Well, if that's the case, then this will be quick. We'll send you the details of the alimony later for your review. Hearing the actual possibility of alimony claims, both John and Sarah started to panic. Mia, you already have plenty of money, right? Weren't you going to celebrate your own sister's marriage? John tried to guilt-trip me. Yeah, I'm practically just a part-timer at my job now, I don't have that kind of money. Hey, remember that dress I gave you for your birthday? Can't we just call it even with that? Sarah suggested, as if a dress could compensate for everything. As if a dress could make up for a divorce. How much more could they belittle others? The audacity of thieves. Cheating and stealing someone's husband and acting like there's no harm done, I countered. It's your fault for not keeping him interested, for being taken away. Didn't you know John prefers more feminine women? Sarah tried to shift the blame onto me. What are you saying? That's like saying it's not the shoplifter's fault for stealing, but the store's fault for being robbed. It doesn't matter if you're a full-time employee or a part-timer, a woman or a man. If you do something wrong, you have to make amends, I argued. I pulled up my phone and showed them a web page listing the typical compensation amounts for adultery and mental distress. Letting them know I was serious. Well, if you're prepared to deal with the consequences, then I suppose it can't be helped. John seems to be doing well as a distinguished organization employee, so I'm sure you'll manage somehow, I said with a hint of sarcasm. Organization employee or not, I don't have a fancy title, and this amount. You don't feel even a little bit responsible for lowering it? John pleaded, looking up at me. But there was no room for pity. Not at all. I've done nothing to be ashamed of in our marriage. How dare you? Sure, we've had our share of inconveniences living under the same roof, but that's no reason for an affair with my sister. Nor a reason to reduce the alimony, I continued, standing my ground. After leaving the diner, I went straight to proceed the divorce. Now I am officially divorced. What a relief. I'm better off without him, I sighed, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders. The proceedings that followed the divorce happened swiftly. Although Nathan, being a junior lawyer, didn't take on my case as the main attorney, he was actively involved in supporting the lead lawyer. Thanks to Nathan's efforts in connecting me with a highly competent senior lawyer who specialized in divorce and infidelity cases, I was able to secure an alimony that exceeded the standard amount. It really makes a difference when someone understands the pain of others. And to think I trusted. I mused. Grateful for Nathan's empathy and support. It seems Sarah had a tough time after everything unfolded. Her family, suspecting something was amiss when my divorce occurred around the same time, confronted her and ultimately disowned her after learning the whole story. Despite being considered beautiful and a good listener, leading to a wide circle of friends, Sarah faced a series of fallouts with longtime friends due to the scandal. One friend, after inquiring about her gleeful marriage announcement, realized the groom was my husband, leading to widespread knowledge of the incident and Sarah being labeled a homewrecker, causing others to distance themselves from her. Everyone's avoiding me. Isn't that terrible? Say something to them, Mia, Sarah pleaded. What can I possibly say after you did what you did, got pregnant, and stole your sister's husband? It's shameful, I responded. John, too, felt the repercussions at his workplace once the cause of our divorce, which involved an affair with his sister-in-law, was leaked. He had assumed he would become a permanent employee in the next round of personnel changes. But the organization decided they couldn't retain someone involved in such a notorious rumor. We met once after the divorce to discuss alimony, but it was a disastrous encounter. What should I do? I've been fired from the organization. I can't even pay the alimony, what now? John lamented. I thought organizations hardly ever fire people unless for a significant reason? Well, you brought this upon yourself with your actions, I remarked. His lack of ethics forced them to corner him into resigning voluntarily. A friend mentioned hearing an employee causing a commotion loud enough to be heard from the service counter, and I was certain it was John. Can't you somehow explain it away? He desperately asked. Wait a minute, what do you expect me to explain? I'm struggling to understand how you could even think like that. I expressed my disbelief. It's true what they say, you can't keep people from talking. The story of the man who pursued his sister-in-law and ended up fathering a child with her spread rapidly, leaving both of them nearly unemployable. Nowhere will hire me, I have no money, I've got nothing left. What should I do? John despaired. Well, you still have Sarah and the child you love, right? There's nothing I can do for you now. Just make sure to take responsibility, I told him. Offering no sympathy. John became an outcast, frowned upon just by the mention of his name. Given the situation that made it seem almost impossible for him to remain in his hometown. He still couldn't easily give up his home due to the decades-long mortgage remaining on it, and so he continues to live there, enduring the judgment of others. After divorcing John, I decided to devote myself to my work more than ever before. My efforts to improve my sales performance continued, and I even started attending business school on my days off to further my career. Fortunately, during my time at business school, I connected with a CEO of a large corporation, leading to an unexpected job offer. I was thrilled not only to be recognized for my abilities but also grateful for the opportunity to test my skills in a new environment. The company is significantly large, with the potential to nearly double my current salary, making this opportunity attractive both professionally and financially. My skills as a salesperson are sharp. Seizing this chance to reach new heights, I feel my life is now more fulfilling than ever. From the beginning of our marriage, I've been tormented by my snide mother-in-law and father-in-law, and to make matters worse, they've constantly berated me for not being able to have children. To add insult to injury, even my husband, who was supposed to support me, said to me, "My sister-in-law is young and beautiful, and unlike you. She's had kids right away." I'm honestly jealous of my brother. Moreover, my mother-in-law accused me of being infertile because I was having an affair and claimed she had caught me on a hidden camera as proof of my so-called infidelity. So, I devised a plan and called a family gathering under the pretext of celebrating my nephew's birthday, where I proposed we watch the evidence of my alleged affair that my mother-in-law was talking about. Upon viewing it, words like, "I knew it," slipped out in despair from my sister-in-law, Ken, and my father-in-law. My name is Mia, I'm 34 years old. I work in the international business division of a mid-sized trading company. I live with my husband Ken, who is the same age as me and works at a steel manufacturer, and my in-laws. We don't have any children yet. I met my husband at a dating event that a friend invited me to. By my 4th year on the job, I was finally getting the hang of it and starting to enjoy it, so I wasn't very interested in getting married. But I couldn't refuse my college friend who insisted, "You have to come." So, my main interest was solely focused on the special menus that each restaurant had prepared for the dating event. Literally, a case of a bread is better than the songs of birds. I felt somewhat detached from my friend who was actively mingling, but it turned out that she had become close to a man who was there with Ken. Apparently, Ken wasn't too keen on the event either and had been reluctantly dragged along. Somehow, as bystanders, we ended up hanging out together, but since I intended it to be a one-time thing, I deliberately didn't exchange contact information with him. However, exactly 1 week after the dating event, on a Friday, I received a call from an unknown number on my phone. At first, I ignored it, but after work, I started receiving calls every 10 minutes. Who on earth is this? I was annoyed and about to block the number, but before I did that, I answered the phone to see who was making such a call anyway. It turned out to be Ken, whom I'd met at the dating event. Oh, good. Is this Mia, right? While I was relieved to find out who it was, but I'm sure that I hadn't given my number to Ken at that time. When I questioned Ken, he casually replied, I got this number by begging a friend who was with me at the event. It seemed that my friend, who had hit it off with Ken's friend, decided to start dating him following the dating event. Meanwhile, Ken, having failed to get my contact information, heard about this from his friend and managed to get my number by pestering my friend. Although I was negatively surprised by my friend for casually sharing my number and by Ken for taking advantage of that. We somehow started dating, and a year later, he proposed to me. It wasn't exactly a whirlwind romance, but I thought I could live a peaceful life with Ken, who had a somewhat gentle and endearing personality. There were no issues from my side regarding the marriage. My parents had been living separately since I entered college. They hadn't divorced because they saw no particular benefit in doing so at this point. Friends and acquaintances would ask if I wasn't sad, but having been practically estranged within my own family, I saw their separation as an inevitable outcome. I was financially supported by my parents during my college years, so I visited my parents' houses alternately during long vacations. However, since I started working, I have been using my busy work schedule as an excuse to solely report what's going on social networking sites. So, when I informed my parents about my marriage, they said they would attend the ceremony if one was held. But when I told them it would just be a registration with no special ceremony, they later sent me a substantial sum of money as a wedding gift, which was more than enough for me. However, my in-laws, Sarah and Sean, seemed dissatisfied with my parents' handling of the marriage. To think they would settle their only daughter's marriage with money, how incredibly insensitive, they sneered. Indeed, it's quite concerning, they said with a bitter tone. But then, my now husband Ken defended me, saying, money is certainly a sign of love. It's absurd for Mom, who has never worked, to say such a thing. Dad should know better, given how hard to earning money. I felt truly happy for choosing him. However, about 4 years into our marriage, things started to take a turn for the worse. The first sign was my promotion. I had worked diligently in my assigned department since joining the company and decided to take the promotion exam that year. When I passed, I was told, Mia, you mentioned in your interview that you wanted to work globally in the future, right? How about starting in the international business division to gain some experience? I was thrilled that my efforts were recognized, and I thought I would be able to share that joy with Ken. But when I told him, he became visibly upset and lashed out, oh, okay. And what are you trying to say? That you've climbed the ladder? That you're some big shot now? Surprised by Ken's reaction, I wondered if I had said something to offend him and apologized, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. However, Ken retorted, see, you playing the victim like that just proves you're looking down on me. And angrily threw his beer can into the trash before slamming the door and leaving our apartment. He didn't return for a week. He wouldn't read my texts or answer my calls. I even called his office, but they said he was out, and I could only confirm that he was safe. I considered waiting for him outside his office, but I didn't want to embarrass him. So, I decided to go to my in-laws' house to discuss the situation with them. I knew I'd be blamed, but I had no other choice. Despite the sudden visit, I was surprised at how smoothly I was let in, but as soon as I stepped into the living room, I was frozen by Ken's tirade. What do you want now? You've come all this way to mock me some more, is that it? Of course, I immediately said that wasn't my intention and that I would apologize if I had caused any misunderstanding. But Ken was as unreceptive as ever. What's worse, my in-laws joined in blaming me. Just because you both work, doesn't mean you get to act all snobby. Don't you know that's not how a wife should behave? This is exactly why we were against this marriage from such an insane family. Sarah started cursing me as loudly as Ken. From there, it was just an endless lecture about how I was to blame for hurting their son's ego, no matter what I said. Finally, they said, Ken doesn't want to return to the apartment you two lived in. If you don't want a divorce, Then move out of that apartment and come live here with us. We'll teach you how to be a proper wife. In hindsight, I wonder why I didn't just agree to a divorce right then and there. But at that time, I still had feelings for Ken, and having grown up watching my parents live as a married couple in name only, I was perhaps making misguided reflections about not understanding what marriage was. Soon after, I did as my mother-in-law suggested, moved out of the apartment, and started living with my in-laws. My in-laws were extremely pleased with this, and I soon understood why. It turned out that Ken's older brother by 3 years, Evan, who had been living with them, left the house about 3 months before my promotion, saying he wanted to live alone because he had found a girlfriend. Sarah, who had adored Evan, who graduated from a more prestigious university than Ken, was shocked and deeply distressed by his sudden departure. But the problem wasn't just the emotional shock. Evan's departure also meant the loss of the financial contributions he had been making to the household, which was a major issue. My in-laws are vain and like to show off, often hosting gatherings with relatives, serving them expensive drinks and food. Evan's financial contributions had been their lifeline, as my father-in-law's earnings from his post-retirement job were insufficient to cover their lavish spending. They had convinced Ken, who had come home to vent, to move in with them, and that was the real story behind our living situation. Ken, for his part, seemed to enjoy the sudden attention after always feeling inferior to his accomplished brother. When I realized this, it was as if scales fell from my eyes, but more trouble was to come. Soon after, Evan married his girlfriend Kelly, who turned out to be quite a handful. Kelly was 6 years younger than Evan and 2 years younger than both Ken and myself. She appeared fragile and delicate, the kind that stirs the protective instincts in men. This was true for both Sean and Ken, who became visibly restless whenever Kelly visited and acted like her followers. Sarah, not amused by this, began to berate me, saying, "Ken is smitten with his brother's wife because you lack charm. If you just give birth to a grandchild, my husband would settle down as a grandfather." She even went so far as to suggest I quit my job to focus on getting pregnant. However, due to my in-laws' extravagant spending, the household expenses were skyrocketing, and Ken's salary alone couldn't cover them. Even when I showed them a document from the household budgeting software and explained this, they dismissed it, saying, "That's just because you're bad at managing money." Always full of excuses. Then, Kelly became pregnant. Sarah, who had disliked Kelly, suddenly became obsessed with her first grandchild. She doting on her grandson Justin immensely. This led her to eagerly welcome Kelly's visits, which she had previously avoided, and even say things like, "Oh, how wonderful it would be to live under the same roof as such a lovely grandchild." Ken then started to throw remarks at me, dripping with sarcasm. "Exactly. Kelly is young and beautiful, and unlike you. She gave birth to a child right away. I'm really envious of my brother." Sean chimed in, "That's right. Maybe we should just kick out the daughter-in-law who can't bear children and have Evan's family move in with us instead," he said carelessly. By then, even I started thinking, indeed, since we don't have children, perhaps leaving Ken and this house might be an option. Then, as if on cue, Kelly became pregnant with her second child. Sarah's obsession with her grandchildren intensified, and her treatment of me became even harsher. And somehow, she came up with the absurd theory and said, "The reason you can't have children must be because you're having an affair. You're just worried you won't know if the child is Ken's or your lover's." I was dumbfounded and chose to ignore her, but one evening, I noticed Sarah smirking at me. Confused, I asked what was going on, and she said, "You were indeed having an affair." Just as I suspected, and to my questioning Sean and Ken, she declared, "I've got proof of her affair on a hidden camera. I hired a professional, so it's foolproof," and burst out laughing joyfully. Hearing this, Sean and Ken were momentarily shocked, but then, influenced by Sarah's confidence, they said, "If that's true, then it's grounds for divorce." Of course. At that point, I said, "Understood. Then, I will take this opportunity at Justin's birthday celebration next week, which we had already planned, to explain the situation to all the relatives gathered there." The birthday celebration for Justin, organized by extravagant loving Sarah, turned out to be a lavish affair with a banquet hall in a hotel reserved just for us. The invited relatives seemed somewhat fed up with Sarah's boasting but appeared to enjoy the food and drinks. As the party was winding down and I took the microphone to speak, everyone turned their attention to me, wondering what was happening. I began. I apologize for interrupting your conversations, but I have a brief announcement to make to all of you gathered here today. The crowd murmured in confusion, while my in-laws and Ken, assuming I was about to admit my guilt and discuss divorce, smirked just as they had before. The guests of honor today, the family of Evan, were also present. Upon my signal to the staff, a screen was lowered behind me. As the projector was brought in and the lights dimmed, everyone's attention turned to the screen as the video began to play. The video started with footage of a suspicious-looking hotel district, and as one particular hotel entrance came into focus, Ken, Sean, and Kelly's faces began to pale, as expected. However, Sarah, unaware of what was about to unfold, looked around curiously, oblivious to the tension among the three. The next moment, a clear shot captured by the camera elicited a collective gasp of surprise from the relatives. And for good reason. The screen unmistakably showed Kelly and Sean hugging as they emerged from the hotel. The room fell silent as the video continued to show them sharing lingering, passionate hugs. As the two caught a taxi, the scene shifted, and the same hotel entrance was shown again in close-up. But this time, it wasn't Sean who emerged holding hands with Kelly, but Ken. Ken, Sean, and Kelly all remained frozen, murmuring, "I knew it." The room erupted into murmurs once again. At that moment, I paused the playback, turned the lights back on, and began to speak into the microphone. My announcement to all of you is exactly as you've just seen. My husband Ken and father-in-law Sean have been having affairs with Kelly, the wife of Evan. The evidence has been meticulously recorded by the investigation company hired by Sarah, I stated, showing a thick file of documents, which prompted more roars from the crowd. As the roars subsided, I revealed that the investigation company had been hired by Sarah not to uncover the infidelity of Sean, Ken, and Kelly, but to find evidence of my supposed affair in order to expel me. Probably Ken, who must have been annoyed by my presence, filled her with all sorts of nonsense. It's absurd to take such things seriously, I said, causing the relatives to look at Ken and Sarah with disbelief. Sarah declared victory without even checking the contents when the investigation company reported they had caught the evidence on camera. Unfortunately, I have no idea about such allegations. I then projected a photograph onto the screen. It was a snapshot taken at the maternity hospital when Justin was born, showing my sister-in-law holding Justin in the center, with Evan smiling beside her, and Ken and I, who had come to celebrate, in the background. Since Sarah has always disliked me, I believe she didn't have a single clear photo of me. So, she sent this snapshot to the investigation company, requesting them to find evidence of the daughter-in-law's infidelity, I explained. As I spoke, I glanced briefly at Sarah, who seemed taken aback, as if I had hit the nail on the head. However, the investigation company commissioned for the task mistook Kelly, who was holding the child, as the daughter-in-law under investigation. Upon starting their investigation, they unexpectedly captured Sean and Ken repeatedly visiting the hotel with Kelly. Believing Evan to be the husband under scrutiny, the investigators reported to Sarah that they had caught the evidence on camera. Sarah mistakenly believed this to be evidence of my alleged affair. When suddenly confronted with the existence of such evidence, I was initially surprised, but then something clicked in my mind. It was the name of the investigation company, which appeared on the statement of the credit card used by Sarah. In fact, Sarah, who is a spendthrift, made me get a family card for her to use for her own purchases, etc. Just in case the credit card in her name was not enough to cover the available credit card funds. Troubled by her making large purchases without consulting me, I had set up the card statement to be viewable in an app so I could preemptively check the monthly charges. So, I took a half day off the next day and went to the investigation company to explain the situation. I then commissioned a new investigation myself. The investigation company, realizing their mistake, eagerly accepted the task to make amends. They quickly provided the results, hence the evidence presented today. As the screen was removed and the lights brightened, Kelly, Sean, and Ken all had pale faces. I approached the great-aunt and uncle, whom my in-laws greatly respected, and requested I apologize for the inconvenience. But I prefer not to expose the children, especially Justin, to the following discussion. Could someone please take them to another room? The great-aunt and uncle immediately approached Kelly, took Justin, and handed him over to their own children. The other children were also led to another room by several women, leaving behind furious relatives, dazed Sarah, and a bewildered Evan. Only Kelly, Sean, and Ken remained, shrinking under the stern glares of the relatives. Then, Sarah, previously trembling, leaped towards Kelly, shouting, "What have you done? Betraying me and Evan with Sean and Ken." She lunged at Kelly. Several relatives rushed to stop her, but Kelly was already petrified. Sean and Ken were similarly frightened. However, I decided to deliver the final blow to them. Regrettably, given the circumstances, I will be divorcing Ken. I apologize for any inconvenience caused to everyone here. According to the investigation company, the improper relations between these three have been ongoing and not just recent. Reconciliation is impossible, I announced, then pretended to stumble, adding, after reviewing the investigation results, I've been tormented by the thought that Justin, and even the child Kelly is currently carrying, might belong to Sean or Ken. Then, the remaining women in the venue rushed over and rubbed my back and took my arms to support me, and said to the three of them, "What shameless people you are. You are all disgusting, poor you." They started cursing. The men looked on with disdain, surrounding the three with cold stares. Silenced by the disapproval, Sean and Ken could do nothing but stand there as the only sounds in the room were Sarah's ranting and Kelly's sobbing. The aftermath of me dropping the bomb that day spread far and wide. When Evan found out that his wife had been cheating on him with his brother and father, he was dazed for a while, but as he regained his senses, he began to seriously suspect the second doubt I had raised, that of cuckoldry. Cuckoldry? That's just a blatant lie from her. Both Justin and the baby in my womb are undeniably your children. Kelly pleaded desperately, but a suspicion once planted in the heart does not disappear with just a few words. Stealing a moment when Kelly was off guard, Evan used a paternity test kit he had ordered to check their father-child relationship. And the results turned out to be positive. However, even when confronted with the results, Kelly adamantly refused to admit to cuckoldry, frustrating Evan to the point where he contacted her parents. Caught completely off guard, Kelly's parents couldn't accept the story from Evan alone and came to my office to demand an explanation about the whole affair. Though I found it bothersome, I thought this is what I had to do eventually. So I took the next day off and went with Kelly's parents and the couple to the law firm I had hired. When the lawyer, called Tom, showed them the related documents and the infamous video, Kelly's parents were speechless. Seeing this, Evan triumphantly declared, "See? I told you. She betrayed me, cheating with both my brother and father. It's clear neither Justin nor the baby she's carrying are mine." However, Tom cut him off sharply. "Would you mind discussing that among yourselves? You're here not to discuss who the father of the children is, but to demand the child's support." Of course, it was obvious. I couldn't comprehend why Tom, whom I had hired, should take Evan's side. But what shocked me more were Kelly and her parents. "After all, it's your fault. Ken cheated on you because you were working all the time, not being attractive, right? Then it's your own doing." Kelly retorted mockingly, but I replied, "Is that so? Then we'll have to let a third party decide who's right, perhaps a judge." The ones who turned pale at that moment were Kelly's parents. And no wonder, since both of them were teachers at a prestigious girls' school in a local area. The idea of their daughter, who was supposed to embody the ideals of a good wife and wise mother, had a sordid affair and cuckoldry with her brother-in-law and father-in-law would definitely tarnish their reputation. Upon hearing the word trial, Kelly's parents immediately begged, "We sincerely apologize." However, as far as I was concerned, an apology at this stage, from anyone, was irrelevant. I gave Tom a look and got up, signaling the end of the meeting. Later, Tom informed me that after I left, Evan, Kelly, and her parents caused a huge uproar. But they finally left after Tom threatened to call the police. Subsequently, perhaps as a form of hush money, Kelly's parents transferred a large sum of money through Tom. Given this turn of events, what happened to Evan and Kelly was of no consequence to me, but around the same time, I learned about the fate of my in-laws through Ken, who had also demanded asset division. According to Ken, Evan filed for divorce. Furthermore, he refused to pay child support for Justin and also for the unborn child unless a DNA test proved he was the father. He declared he would file for denial of paternity as soon as the child was born. Fearing the worst, Kelly's parents, against her wishes, forced her to undergo prenatal testing. Turns out, the father of the unborn child was indeed not Evan but, astonishingly, Ken. Furthermore, the revelation that Justin's father was Sean made the situation beyond redemption. Upon learning this, Sarah, who had doted on Justin, was devastated to find out he was actually her husband's child, leading to a mental breakdown. She has aged rapidly and is now almost bedridden, with Sean care of her around the clock. He told his father-in-law, "I won't look after you in your old age. Get Ken to take care of you." Unfortunately, most of Sean's retirement funds were spent on luxury brands and jewelry for Kelly to win her favor, leaving almost nothing behind. As a result, the offset against the inheritance meant Sean and Sarah, now abandoned by Evan, turned to Ken in desperation. Ken himself, already burdened with the asset division claims from me, was reportedly being pressured by Kelly, who had been divorced by Evan, with a demand to remarry her, insisting, "Now that it's come to this, you're going to take responsibility for both the unborn child and me. I'm sorry for everything that's happened. I apologize, so please give me another chance. I love you, Mia." He begged for forgiveness. But it was clear that what he wanted back was not my love, but my financial support and a wife to take care of his parents for free. Since I had no lingering feelings for Ken, I instructed Tom to convey my final decision and blocked all contact except for one social media platform. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. Despite some disputes, the asset division were paid in full in 2 installments. According to Tom, Kelly continued to live with my in-laws without being officially registered as part of the family, pretending to be Ken's wife. However, after the visiting relatives spread the word, the entire neighborhood began whispering about the shameless family, driving her to become a recluse at home. She neither helped with caring for Sarah nor took care of Justin and the newborn, leading to a report to Child Services by the kindergarten concerned about Justin's unkempt appearance. In the end, Kelly's parents took in the 2 children, but they disowned her, saying, "You are no longer our daughter, nor are we your parents. Never show your face to us again." With nowhere else to turn, Kelly came to rely on Ken for everything, just like my parents-in-law, and said, "Ken's income alone now supports 4 adults, including his mother, who needs nursing care." Moreover, according to a colleague of Ken's who works at the same company, a relative who works at an affiliated company has exaggerated the story, making Ken the target of rumors as bad as the scumbag of the compilation video site. Despite the difficult circumstances, he continues to work, unable to quit due to financial needs, and is enduring the discomfort. For some reason, Evan seemed to regard us as fellow victims. Yet, the fact remains that he looked down on me, along with Kelly and in-laws, as a woman unable to bear children. Naturally, I ignored him completely at work, but as rumors somehow spread within our company, he couldn't bear the whispers and volunteered to transfer to a subsidiary in a regional area. After everything was settled on my end, I was approached about a transfer to an overseas branch. Though I had expressed a desire to work abroad during my job interview, the sudden offer honestly caught me off guard. However, my bosses encouraged me, acknowledging the career I had diligently built and the language skills I continued to learn in my spare time. Feeling fed up with the rumors, much like Evan, albeit for different reasons, I decided to take a bold step and accept the assignment. Ken, who somehow heard the news, sent a series of cliched romantic messages pleading for reconciliation to the only social media account I hadn't blocked him on. But planning to cancel my phone service when I leave the States, I decided to ignore them. Despite all that happened, cutting ties with that in-law family felt like a stroke of luck. With this in mind, I feel ready to face any challenges that may come my way. I might think it's a bit opportunistic, but that's honestly how I feel. Perhaps I had been too self-deprecating all this time. From now on, I plan to stay positive and give everything my best effort.